Welcome everyone to the captive audience. Sorry, the screen's a little shaky there, and I hope the network connection is working out okay here. I can't really tell, but it looks like there's a little bit of a lag, and I apologize for that. But I'm going to kind of do a whirlwind tour of the news here today, just to give you a brief sense of things, and then get on to St. Patrick's Day, which, by the way, happy St. Patrick's Day. I saw some super giant um, rainbows just recently here as I was driving along the highway and was almost tempted to go find a pot of gold at the end of them. However, I think we all know that most of that pot of gold has been wasted due to waste, fraud, and abuse. And so we'll need Doge to find it, I think. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope you enjoy the show here today. Anyway, let me start out here with some interesting news. So this is school board season. And for those of us who are out there trying to get people elected to different offices, May is prime time in Oregon for getting people elected to school board. Now, why is that important? It's important because right now, many school boards are controlled by the teachers' unions, by groups that have the power to control school boards, but they don't necessarily have the popular support if someone knows what they really stand for or were offered a reasonable alternative. So let me just say that right now we have an important mission ahead of us, and I want to share that with you because there's a lot to know. The Department of Health and Human Services in Maine the Federal Department of Health and Human Services has found Maine guilty of Title IX violations for letting males play in girls' sports. So as we know, just a few short months ago, the Biden administration was trying to get Title IX changed so that it would require that biological males, be allowed to play in girls' sports. Now, after the executive orders from President Trump, this entire thing has been reversed. And now the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Health and Human Services is cracking down. And Greeley High School is a specific example of this. And of course, as we know, that's dangerous for women. We saw in the President's State of the Union address that there was a woman who actually was injured by a man who said he was feeling like a woman, so he wanted to play in women's sports. He did, and he injured her severely. Did some brain damage to her, and she's done playing, even though she was a college prospect. So now is the time for us to step forward on these types of issues. I just posted a link to this, but let me say that I want this to get spread far and wide if possible. If you go to parentsrightsandeducation.com, you can take this quiz and see where you land on these issues. And please check it out, because if you know people that you think might actually make a good candidate for something, they have until Thursday at 5 p.m. here in the state of Oregon to file for there are many, many positions, some of which there's only one candidate filed. There's even some positions that don't have candidates filed yet. And though they may still have candidates filing before we get to the end of filing day, what they don't often have are conservatives. And so let me go ahead and share this with you, because these are, the Trump administration's tackling this from the national level, but we can do this here locally. Anyway, going on with some of the news here, 15 Republican state attorneys general have applauded the Trump administration for combating anti-Semitism on college campuses. And it's the states of Georgia, West Virginia, Mississippi, Iowa, North Dakota, Florida, Oklahoma, Montana, Louisiana, Indiana, Missouri, Utah, South Dakota, and Kansas. Notably, Oregon is not one of them. In fact, Oregon has a completely different point of view on this, and they love apparently engaging in what is being investigated here. How do we know that? Because actually, the University of Oregon is one of the campuses that's under investigation for the way it is handled. In particular, the complaints of anti-Semitism on college campuses here during the pro-Hamas protests that have been going on almost continuously and have even become pretty raucous and violent, especially now that that Columbia University student who was here on a green card was determined, since he was negotiating on behalf of the pro-Hamas group at the college campus for protests, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has ruled that he's actually a danger to our foreign policy and national security, and has had him removed. And now that's stuck in court, as many of these things do get stuck in court. So the University of Oregon is now on the receiving end of one of these investigations, and it's the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. So the nonprofit that is being investigated at U of O is called the PhD Project, an organization founded more than 30 years ago. It supports students from supposedly underrepresented communities in obtaining doctoral business degrees. Many of the students who take part in the organization's projects have gone on to become university professors and business leaders. The federal government alleges the nonprofit, as well as the universities who signed on as members, have limited student access to programming based on race, restricting educational opportunities. The department says if it does not comply with the law, federal funding can be stripped away. So that's more of a DEI case. But the article goes on to explain that that a separate investigation involving 6 universities Friday, alleging that they awarded scholarships and segregated students based on race, but that U of O is not the target of that investigation. So there's a couple of different investigations. However, it does explain that that in their efforts to root out anti-Semitism, U of O and I believe Portland State University are also facing investigations. So this is getting serious, and they're going to have to comply with this, or they will jeopardize funding. And you'd think that this is something that groups that have for decades have said that this is their objective, is to end discrimination and make it fair for all groups, now have decided to become the discriminators themselves, and they're facing the consequences. Here's an interesting piece of national news that I'm going to just throw in here. President Trump has actually acknowledged something that we talked about last week, which is that President Biden's pardons, some of them, might be void because he used an auto pen. Now, there is a court case back in there's a Department of Justice determination in 2004 that claimed that auto pen signed items were legitimate. However, they also haven't had to question whether or not the President of the United States actually knew he was doing things or not. And that has obviously been the case quite frequently with Joe Biden, and that he was at times seemingly uninvolved with his own presidency and the decisions that were being made supposedly in his name and our name. And here's what President Trump said about this, because of course there was the pardons of Biden's son Hunter, Dr. Anthony Fauci, and some of the select House committee members that impeached Trump over the January 6th riot. And of course, they engaged in activities that they needed to be pardoned for, apparently. The pardons, according to President Trump, that sleepy Joe Biden gave to the unselect committee of political thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done by auto pen. So they're going to push this test into the courts. He alleged that not only did Biden not sign the pardons, he did not know anything about them. Biden has not made a statement about this. And so far, the people who have received the pardons don't have much to say either. President Trump concluded his statement by saying, Therefore, those on the unselect committee who destroyed and deleted all evidence obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me and many other innocent people should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is, they were probably responsible for the documents that were signed on their behalf without the knowledge or consent of the worst president in the history of our country, crooked Joe Biden. So not pulling any punches there. But you got to love it because he's actually telling it like it is. And you know what? Democrats aren't spending a lot of time defending Joe Biden anymore, if you hadn't noticed. And it's kind of great. Meanwhile, this is what federal judges are keeping themselves busy with. And that is something that we should be very concerned about. Specifically, a federal judge has called a hearing on the Trump deportation of what they call alleged gang members. The court is actually trying to block this effort. Now, interestingly enough, a bunch of these gang members, under a provision, a very old U.S. law that allows the president to determine that someone is a threat to the nation's security, is now being challenged in court. And this judge tried to order the president not to deport these gang members. However, this U.S. District Judge James Boasberg issued an order saying that President Trump could not use the 1789 Alien Enemies Act. Now, laws don't go out of use just because they're old. And frankly, I know Democrats don't care much for the Constitution at times, but that's the oldest of the laws. Anyway, that Alien Enemies Act grants authority to deport illegal migrants without having the opportunity to go before an immigration or federal court judge. This judge, and apparently Hakeem Jeffries, has supported this. He's the minority leader in the House. So Democrats are just doubling down on stupid by claiming that the most important thing that can happen here is that Tren de Aragua members, which has been designated by the president as a terrorist organization, a legal designation the president is authorized to determine, is that Democrats are saying they would love it and really want to bring these people back, the ones who've been deported, so they can have time in front of a federal court judge. And the flights are in the air at the time of the ruling and went all the way to El Salvador and the other to Honduras. This judge has verbally ordered the planes to turn around. And this is hilarious because district court judges are not the executive branch. They do not have this authority. The case can be adjudicated regardless and proceed through the court system. But these district judges are acting like they have unlimited authority. Now, at this point in time, the president has not. The president is complying with this court order at this point. However, what's interesting is that these people that were deported, according to Secretary Rubio, were in fact all illegal migrants. So there's actually no legitimate reason to bring them back. There's just no reason. Because even if if one of them happens to not be a member of Tren de Aragua for whatever reason, and they can bring that evidence to the court and then therefore claim this law cannot be applied, they're an illegal migrant who doesn't belong in the country and did not enter under legal circumstances. So they don't belong here. So there's no reason or grounds to bring them back. So these federal district court judges, which are all super liberal, I think one of them, I think this one actually, I heard from Mark Levin, was appointed by Bill Clinton and is a senior judge. So he only takes certain cases. And this is a ringer. They went and they found this guy, I think in San Francisco, and got him to go and issue this ruling. So this is abuse of our constitutional system. Democrats howl and squeal about this, but about the Constitution. But frankly, this is where the Constitution says there's an executive branch. They have this authority and that authority granted them by Congress. And judges don't have the ability to order the president around to do these things. Now, if you haven't had a chance to read this article, I suggest you take the time to read it. It is informative, but at the same time, let me add that that I think the general idea that judges have this, district court judges have this far-reaching power over the entire United States executive branch and the presidency, is also now going to be challenged. And I wonder if the Democrats are going to go all the way and try to determine if that's the case or not, because that could easily be hemmed in and tested here and limited in a way that might be the law of unintended consequences for the Democrats. They do not want to see something like this actually cause them to lose the ability to do what they have been trying to do, which is have the courts control the President Trump, even though those courts tend to ignore everybody and everything. A hilarious Babylon Bee article, which, as you know, is a satire site, came out, and it says, the headline says, "Judge orders astronauts to be returned to space station." So it's, the rule of people in robes everywhere it's hilarious, because that's actually not how our system works. There are decisions that can be made by the president. They can be challenged in court, but the executive branch is not run by the court system. And there are going to be limits placed on what these federal judges can do in ordering around presidents and ordering around people within the federal bureaucracy to take this action or that action. And so, and I don't think there is a remedy for them to bring back illegal migrants who are members of gangs that have been deported. They may test the law, but they don't have the ability to order planes to turn around in the air and come back. And they shouldn't. So if they were actually busy with the things they should be, they'd be trying to figure out if thousands of people who have no business being given pardons by an auto pen instead of a president, in fact, whether or not that's legit. And it's going to be challenged. And I think this is great. We're fighting on all fronts. Let's shift to Oregon here for a little bit, and let's talk about what's happening in the state of Oregon. Oregon's kicker tax refund could be eliminated or altered as lawmakers supposedly seek reform. That's what they want to do, is they want to steal it from you. And they do have a lot of power now. So they can take thousands of dollars away from you, which is, the kicker law was passed by voters in 1980. And it returns money to Oregonians when the state's revenue is at least 2% higher than forecasted. That's to keep the state from just spending and spending and spending and raising the baseline budget by even more, just because more money comes in. Instead, that returns it to the taxpayers who paid it. Oregonians actually passed Measure 85, in 2012, which diverts the corporate kicker revenue back into the general fund for public education. That's worked great, because K through 12 schools have absolutely gone into the toilet in the last 13 years. Even more so since the so-called Student Success Fund was funded with the CAT tax back in 2018. And so this just means more money to fund failure, because they keep doing the same thing over and over. But the corporate kicker from the 21 through 2023 biennium totaled $1.8 billion. It was the largest in state history. And so, that's plowing money back into the schools, even though it's obviously not having the benefit of improving the schools. There has been also a record 2023 $5.6 billion kicker. The state economists estimate taxpayers will see a $1.73 billion kicker, which is much lower, but still significant in 2026. It's only, I guess, every so many years that you get a kicker, if the conditions are right, because it's a biennial budget. But they claim that the government needs this money more than you. And in the past, they've been a little afraid to go seize the personal kicker. But now that they're getting their money cut off from all their woke, idiot, and fake climate crisis programs, and by fake climate crisis, I mean they are throwing money into things which will do nothing to change the climate, but are spending gobs of money on projects that Oregonians either don't want or will not satisfy the need for electrical generation in the state, electrical demand. And they are using it. They do want to use it to fund housing and homelessness services, in addition to the poor student outcomes that they are determined to continue producing. And because they always say that what do they need to solve all the problems in the state? More time and more money. So this is a big deal, and I think we need to keep an eye on it. So it's Oregon Senate Bill 399 proposes returning to checks instead of a credit. And this is a Republican proposed bill because the credit was something that would just net out when you file your refund. And he wants to get it back to where you actually get a check in the mail, and then you decide how you handle your refund. Senate Bill 573, Lou Frederick, he wants to propose ending the kicker altogether. And then there's a House Bill 3360, which would redirect the corporate kicker into school infrastructure, which is hilarious because they spend a lot of money on school infrastructure now. And the one thing it doesn't do is teach kids to read and do math, which they're terrible at. So this is a morass. Not only do we need to go and tackle what's happening in the school boards and get rid of the woke idiot stuff and get back to educating kids in the basics, but they want to fund more stuff. They want to fund more failure. So I'm just going to put that article here for you guys to read. Here's more idiot stuff. Free food for Oregon's non-citizens. That's right. We've talked about this one before. There is a bill, Senate Bill 611, which is to make food essentially free through the Oregon Food Stamp Program for illegal aliens. And of course, this is the thing is that they tried to do this in Multnomah County to get people to be able to vote in county elections who are not citizens. That ballot measure was narrowly defeated in Multnomah County. So they are trying on every front to make non-citizens essentially citizens and give them free stuff so they can get their votes. And they're saying that the other side, the ACLU, the American Criminal Liberties Union, said that voting exclusion based on non-citizen censorship is arbitrary. It's unfair and disproportionately impacts people of color. And it's like, no, it disproportionately impacts people who are not citizens and have no right to vote here. And don't even have a right to be here, but they might enjoy the privilege of being here. And right now, they are throwing out this whole thing about how there's a food crisis and we have to give free food to everybody. What is determined now, only U.S. citizens and certainly certain lawfully resident non-citizens may receive SNAP benefits, the federal food stamp program. That's $122.1 billion annually. It's 53% of the Department of Agriculture's budget. However, the so-called Food for All Oregonians program would extend that to residents of Oregon who are under the age of 26 or 55 years of age or older who qualify for federal SNAP benefits, they would give them state-funded ones. There is one Republican that supports this. I have no idea why. That's Representative Mark Owens. So, but that means that when we reach out and let people know what we think of this, we really do have to make sure everybody knows whether they're supporting or opposing bills like this. The Oregon Food Bank, of course, which is a left-wing front group, and they clearly have been that for a very long time. I've received their emails in the past. If anybody volunteers at the food bank, they start getting these emails which show that the food bank's endorsing every left-wing cause that you could imagine. Tina Kotek has a special connection to the food bank, in fact, which should tell you something. But they plan to put forward this bill, and it's time to let them know that Oregonians are not made of money, and that they don't want something that's probably going to attract an unlimited number of non-citizens, illegal immigrants specifically, to the state of Oregon, a sanctuary state that's already trying to shelter criminal illegal aliens and anybody who might have already been ordered deported by the federal court system when they lost their asylum hearing. So Oregon wants to now give people unlimited free food for that. But that shouldn't surprise you, because there's another bill that declares that breakfast and lunch should be free for all students in the state of Oregon, even if the students their parents are rich. It should be free. And they want to create essentially an entitlement in every school that turns the public school system into a public breakfast and lunch system for everyone, regardless of whether or not they actually cannot afford it. It forces taxpayers to subsidize some of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the state. And frankly, it tries to take this out of the hands of the parents who can provide healthy home meals already, or cater to a child's diet. Instead, they want to create this entitlement and start handing it out to everyone. And of course, the government is notoriously bad at making sure that you receive healthy food advice. As we know, for decades, they actually told us that Lucky Charms was healthy, but many other things like yogurt are not. And it's crazy. But this is House Bill 3435, and it just makes meals available at no cost to everyone. It's now an entitlement. And yeah, so they're giving out free food everywhere, left and right, to illegal immigrants, to wealthy students. And this is a state with a lot of problems. A rampant homelessness crisis, out of control crime, a housing crisis, a general inflation affordability crisis, and frankly, lackluster economic growth. And here's what they're focused on instead. Oregon lawmakers target plastic utensils, condiments, and hotel toiletries. They are with an updated bag ban. They're trying to ban any use of plastic for providing bags that contain these items. And Janine Solomon, a Hillsborough Democrat who is behind the bill, Senator Janine Solomon, said it'll be good for the environment and for businesses, and it'll save money by buying fewer plastic goods. She's convinced that this is the best thing they can do. Now, I don't know. There's going to be Republicans and Democrats, but that might support this. I don't know. All I can tell you is they're clearly not focused on the most important thing, which is we need to make sure that we tackle the wildfires, that we tackle forest management, so I'm just pointing this out because these types of bills end up becoming they start to manage our daily lives and tell everybody and every business what to do. But should they be doing that instead of solving the big problems that we have? Frankly, they're asking for more money for everything they do. They should be figuring out how to fix these problems with the money they have first, and they're not doing that. Here was an interesting thing that caught my attention. ODOT installs fences to curb homeless camping at the I-5 overpass in Salem. Now, I know of a story specifically that happened in Portland where people in the Pearl District tried to clean up the Pearl District and put up fences to stop people from camping on what was state property. They put fences around it. ODOT came and tore down those fences and allowed the fentanyl addicted homeless encampments to return. Now they're actually saying that this works, apparently. And so they are putting up fences to stop people from campaigning at I-5's overpass. They say it's permanent fencing to help discourage illegal camping activities in the area. They said it's unsafe for people to be so close to traffic. They haven't gotten that message in Portland, by the way. They still think it's a good idea for people to camp right next to or in high-speed traffic locations, and so it's the Market Street project, the $75,000 Market Street project, and outside Arches project on Commercial Street. So now they believe that fences do work. So maybe they'll believe walls work actually too on the southern border. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with that. Continuing our whirlwind run. We talked before about how the court system and the Democrats seem to be focused on fighting for woke stuff, fighting to keep gang members here in the United States so that they don't have to be deported. Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield did an interview with the Portland Business Journal to explain why he's repeatedly suing the Trump administration. And he goes in and blah, blah, blah. And he says he's fighting for all Oregon values and blah, blah, blah. He believes this is one of the most important things he's actually doing. Now, he claims that it's only part of what the Oregon Department of Justice is actually doing, because he's asked, where are you focusing your energies outside of Trump litigation? And he says, I always like to remind people that we have 9 divisions of the DOJ. If I were only focusing on this, I wouldn't be doing the duties of the AG. Really? Okay, that's all we see you in the public doing. He said, I can't walk away from consumer protection, helping seniors and working families, because I was so busy enforcing federal accountability. I can't turn my back on public safety. You've walked into a period of history where you have additional responsibility on your plate, and it's your job. And with the help of frontline DOJ attorneys to get this work done, people are stepping up. No sign of that. As we know, all the problems that he says he's paying attention to are worsening or being simply unaddressed. And so I think it's worth keeping track of what this guy says, because he's a bad actor. He doesn't actually intend to do anything but preen virtue signal for the cameras, while not actually solving the severe public safety issues in this state. He's completely failed to do that so far and shown no sign that he's actually seriously interested in it. He talked about this and debated on the campaign trail, but I think we all know where his thoughts really are. By the way, one other free thing in the state of Oregon, free mattress recycling is now available throughout the state. This is because they see this as a way to encourage all the people that are using mattresses that are homeless to instead have those. They say they're going to keep it out of landfills and discourage illegal dumping, but anybody can walk past any homeless encampment and you'll find a whole bunch of ratty, almost dangerous mattresses. Often they get abandoned as well. And so the solution apparently was to make that free throughout the state. So more free stuff. According to the state of Oregon, it's going to be free. Everything's going to be free except you are going to have to pay enormous amounts to not have public safety and to have lovely wildfires every year, or be unable to get insurance for your home in those areas. Well, I think it's time to look at what the Democrats are doing and the reaction to all the stuff that's going on with Trump, because obviously not solving problems here in the state of Oregon. Top Senate Democrat Schumer has had to postpone his book tour due to unspecified security concerns. It was postponed after he allowed a GOP crafted spending measure to pass and actually voted for the measure, which the left has responded to and really angrily. There's a lot of people talking about how AOC should primary him. There's a lot of people saying that maybe his time is done, that he claims that he did it because he didn't want to empower with the government shutdown, a Schumer shutdown. He didn't want to empower President Trump with the ability to shut down entire sections of the government to deal with it. He was worried that that would actually snowball into something that would increase what we're already seeing under Doge. And that's their chief concern, is they want the government as large as possible, whether it's doing its job or not. And but his book is supposed to be, it's entitled Anti-Semitism in America, A Warning. Too bad that he is not more concerned about making sure universities don't engage in anti-Semitism, but he is so threatened by the left now that he can't do his book tour. And he said this is based on what they're seeing on social media platforms. They said that all these events have to be rescheduled because of security concerns. So there you go. And I can imagine that pro-Hamas people are going to be chasing them down. So I don't know. Sounds like poetic justice in a way for Senator Schumer. Tesla protesters are decrying rioters who make them look bad. This is a great article in the Oregon Catalyst. You should take a look at it. It's kind of pithy, and it says that the anti-Tesla protesters are saying that the rioters and the people who are vandalizing and shooting up Tesla stores are making the anti-Tesla protesters, quote, look like negative people, unquote. Another said there would have been a lot more people if this had not been for that shooting. They're saying that their protests are being underattended. And 5 years of tolerating overt acts of violence in the name of leftist politics have made it very difficult for them to put the toothpaste back in the tube. They might be beginning to regret that that they've egged on this violent protests. But these same liberal protesters are inviting violence when they wave signs like, "If Tesla survives, your country dies." That's what that's the type of stuff that these protesters who think that the rioters and the people shooting up Tesla dealerships are making them look bad. Fascinating, isn't it? And last but not least, there's an article in the Oregonian that says Oregon Democrats welcome constituents to packed town halls, but will they have an impact? And they go into talking about the numerous essentially anti-Trump town halls that are being held by Democrats under the guise that this is open to anyone and anyone can be heard and ask them questions. It hasn't been the case for quite a while that Democrats field questions from conservative town hall members. It almost never happens. And this is very similar to what they did in 2017, early in the first Trump administration, when they went after Greg Walden, who at that time was the only elected Republican at the federal level from Oregon. And now, of course, we're back to that with Cliff Bentz being the only elected one. And so maybe the utility value of these town halls is declining because really it's just a bunch of people agreeing with each other who never voted for Trump and never will. And so therefore they just feel comfort in being together. But And maybe they think they're boosting the morale of the Democrat lawmakers who are obviously failing to accomplish anything, including solving the problems of the state of Oregon. But they don't care. They feel good about this. Town halls, according to Jeff Kidder, chair of the steering committee for the progressive group Indivisible, it's a progressive group in rural areas of the state. He says town halls have been a terrific venue for the community to hear their representatives and actually raise their individual concerns. Because for them, the only community is everybody they agree with. He said it's easy if you're at home scrolling through social media, it's easy to feel isolated, alone, and unable to make a difference. But collectively, we can take action, use our voices, and be heard. I think they should keep going and talking to Democrats and telling them to be as radical and left-wing as possible. They're not only not solving anything, but they're usually engaging in wild assertions and conspiracy theories about Social Security being abolished or Medicare being abolished, and telling each other that, and then asking these Democrats what they're going to do about the imaginary problems that they keep describing. And they keep describing them as threats to U.S. democracy. But of course, this is what people voted for, so they don't seem to realize. Actually, people voted for this across, in the federal elections. That's the result of the last election in 2024. And so that is the definition of democracy. They just don't care for democracy that doesn't deliver what they insist everybody should be happy with. Now, Cliff Pence has been subjected to jeers and yelling at his foreign person town halls. And, this is actually what you should expect. I think there's, now that Chuck Schumer himself probably can't go out and be seen in public, things could be turning ugly for Democrats that decide to stand up to the progressive left town hall crowd / Tesla protesters. These folks like to virtue signal to these groups, but not a one of them actually is solving any problems. And until they realize that rooting for men to be continuously allowed into women's sports and other left-wing radical minority stances is not going to help their election prospects, they should just continue doing this because they're going to help Republicans, and that's fantastic. By the way, in the aftermath of the Schumer news from last week, apparently the Democrat Party has descended into the mid-20s in terms of popular support nationally, which is a significant low. They dropped from, I believe it was in the 30s. I just heard that on Fox News the other day. So, this is what Democrats have decided to rally around. It's the focus of their every day and all their activities. And, they're more concerned about federal workers than the workers who are paying for all of this stuff. I see what you guys are saying. And I think Ron Wyden should continue to be irrelevant and a whiner and continue to defend all the policies from the Biden administration that people hated and voted against across the country. I don't know if they'll vote differently in Oregon, but I think they should continue being the bad example for the rest of the country. I think we should defeat them. By the way, one more time, if you have the opportunity, please go and do this yourself. Go to parentsrightsandeducation.com/quiz or prescores.com and share that with anybody who cares about schools, anybody who might even care enough to want to list themselves as a potential candidate. And Parents' Rights is determined to help us start seizing back these school districts, doing a grassroots movement from below, while President Trump does what he's doing from above with the Department of Education and all these things to investigate the woke, discriminatory politics and the funding of our school system across the country. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me here tonight. I hope you guys have a great night and a happy St. Patrick's Day. And Erin go brach.